Good morning, Year 7. So this is our very first distance learning assembly. So I've decided that each week I'm going to do an assembly for you, just as we would if we were at school. And all of the assemblies, just like I would do, if we were back at Embrook, they will all be on kind of things that have happened in the news and things that are really important that are currently happening. So today I'm going to talk to you about something that I'm sure you will have all seen all over kind of social media, all over the news, and that is the Black Lives Matter movement. So as I said, I'm sure you've seen this kind of really predominantly in the news recently. I'm sure you've seen lots of things on social media if you're part of social media. And I personally think that one job of a school is to educate pupils. Now that's not the only job. My job is also to look after you, to make sure you're happy, to make sure you're safe. But education is extremely important. And to me, that doesn't just mean the subjects that different teachers teach you. It doesn't just mean maths and creative writing and science and all those things. It also means kind of helping you to think about what's going on around us and kind of helping you to think how you can start to make a difference to the world that we live in. So the Black Lives Matter movement is of vital importance to each and every one of us. Now sadly, I don't have the time in one assembly to go through every aspect of this movement that has existed for many, many years. So I've picked three and a half maybe, aspects for us to think about today. So that's what we're going to do. So the first of these is a question that I keep hearing people ask. I hear people say it on social media, I hear people, say it around me, and they say, well, actually, does racism still exist in the United Kingdom? Now, there's only one answer to this. Of course it does. Sadly, people experience racism every day in some form or another, whether that be kind of what some people might regard as something small or something, really, really big that we've kind of seen in the news, especially in America at the moment. However, I thought it would be good for you to hear about it from someone who has sadly experienced racism herself. Okay, so I found this while I was kind of browsing the internet, and it's a lady called Evie. Now, she grew up in the southwest of England, so near a place called Plymouth. That is not too far from here, and this wasn't very long ago, okay? She's not much older than you, and she's not much younger than me. So I'm going to show you a video first of her experience of racism, just to answer this question, that racism, of course, exists within the UK.
Hi, my name's Evie, and I am mixed race. I live and grew up in the southwest and went to secondary school in the surrounding area of Plymouth. I have experienced racism in my lifetime. Much of that came from secondary school, and with everything going on in the world at the moment, I really felt like I wanted to say something, but I just couldn't find the words. So I've written a bit of a spoken word poem, word vomit, to try and summarise all of my experiences and what it's like growing up down here. I've titled it, Where Do I Draw the Line? Jamaica man! Mushroom head! Yeah, that's not too bad. OMG, can I touch your hair? Yeah, that drove me mad. Your hair looks so much better straight. Oh my god, can you twerk? Or they'd say a compliment and hide behind a smirk. What about when I spilled my chocolate milkshake all over my skin? And one boy said, that's okay, because it just blends in. Or when my peers would sing N-words in songs at parties with pride. Yeah, it hurt, but I took it in my stride. I even took chemicals to my hair and killed every last curl on my head. That day I ensured every ounce of my blackness was dead. And those boys who asked if my family smoked weed all the time? Yeah, okay, that's rude, but it's not a hate crime. You need to stop feeling so victimised, is what my teacher said. Is this racism, or is it just in my head? You don't see the problem? Okay, that's fine. But may I ask, where do you draw the line? What about the boy that called me the N-word on Facebook? It didn't happen in school, so he was off the hook. Or that time I got told to go back to where I came from? I mean, I was born in Derriford, but by all means, carry on. What about the words, you're black, I hate you? You're black, I hate you. I hate you. racism isn't that bad anymore. Racism doesn't really exist in the UK. You're not really that black. This is all in the past. Those things were said when they were a child. I was a child. There is no excuse for the way I was treated. There is no excuse for this abuse, so I will not be seated. There is no excuse for the lack of racial awareness that is taught in our schools. There is no excuse for this to carry on. There is no excuse for racism, and I will not stop until it's gone. And to my beautiful black brothers and sisters who grew up in a community which told them that they are not wanted, which told them that they are a novelty, that they are only a fascination, a curiosity, which told them that they are not good enough, that they are not equal, who were told to sit down and shut up when they rose to speak their truth. It's okay if these moments have shaped you, but don't you ever let them define you, because I see you, I hear you, and I stand with you. And finally, to everyone, to those who are not aware of what happens in their own community, to those who contributed to our struggle, who caused disunity, to those who were aware but stayed silent, to those who have fought for us every step of the way. You now see us. Fight for justice. Fight for equality. Stand with us forever, not just today.
So I hope that was really kind of informative for you. That video really made me kind of think about our job as teachers, as well as obviously how horrible that must have been for her as a child, to go through those kind of horrible things being said to her, etc. So I just want you to know that as a school, obviously we are 100% anti-racist, and if anything does happen, or if you see anything happen, whether that be on social media, so even if it happens outside of school, whether it happens in school, you have, every right to come and see me, to come and see any of your teachers. And I would absolutely like to say that 100% of the people in this school will do as much as they can to, make your life better by making sure we take everything that is brought to us seriously. And that goes for any type of kind of, injustice, so whether that be kind of racism, homophobia, anything at all, I would like to say that we will definitely take that incredibly seriously. So the second thing that I think it's really important to talk about is something that I've been learning a lot about recently, and this is the term that's at the top of my PowerPoint slide, and it says white privilege. Now, a privilege is something that someone has that means that they're kind of at an advantage. So you've probably heard this term quite a lot, maybe on social media, maybe in the news, but what does it mean? Well, put simply, it means that white people are already at an advantage when they are born, simply because of the colour of their skin. Now, this could be shown in so many different ways. In many countries, it means that you are less likely to be stopped and searched if you are white. Okay, you are less likely to be followed by the police. You are less likely to have an encounter with the police just by the fact that your skin is white. It also means that white people see people who look like them on television. I mean, take a minute to think about the ratio of black to white people in some of your favourite TV shows. I've done this recently, even modern TV shows, and I would say sometimes there isn't a single black person in a whole of an episode. White people have the advantage that, they will learn more about white history in school. Parts of our history curriculum, not even parts, the vast majority of our kind of history curriculum, and that's not the fault of our history teachers, that's the fault of the national curriculum on a wider scale, is kind of, written with white people in mind. And we do learn about kind of some black history, but it's definitely not an equal amount. The books we read as children predominantly describe white characters. They describe people with fair skin, they describe people with fair hair, etc. The press, more often than not, so that's like newspapers and things like that, represent white people, even white criminals, more favourably than black people. Think about the words they use, think about the pictures that they use. They're often very different based on the colour of someone's skin. And there's so many more examples as well. But what have I learned over the past few weeks? I remember we're all always learning, even teachers. So what have I learnt? Well, I have learnt that actually a lot of white people, perhaps even including myself at some point in my life, were kind of scared of accepting that they have white privilege, that they have this advantage over people in some way. But why do you think that is? Why do you think that some white people might not like to accept that they have this privilege, even though we kind of clearly do based on what we've just seen? Well, I think people tend to be scared because they almost think it kind of takes something away from their achievements, because actually, you know, if a white person has achieved something amazing, then actually the fact that they already had kind of an advantage really early in their life might make them think, well, actually, by telling me that I've got this white privilege, it's kind of telling me that I didn't do as well, or I didn't kind of, you know, have this much of a great achievement. But that's not what it's saying. I mean, it's true that, you know, white people do have that advantage, which does in lots of ways make it easier to have some of these achievements. But all it really means is that it's not fair that some people do have that advantage whilst other people don't. So it's all about just accepting that you have it and then fighting so that other people can have this kind of privilege as well, or so that there is no privilege, so that everybody has kind of the same starting kind of package in some way. So, on to my third and almost final section of this assembly. And this one's entitled Staying Silent. So I've shared that picture in the middle because to me this is one of the most important messages to share, because actually it presents us with something almost every day in every environment, and especially at school. So that poster, that kind of placard that someone has made says, "Silence is violence." And I think this is akin to two quotes, okay? One is by Martin Luther King Jr. and the other is by Desmond Tutu. You will learn about Martin Luther King, absolutely, in your history lessons. Everybody will. Desmond Tutu, I'm not so sure. I remember that I used to teach it when I taught religious studies, and Desmond Tutu is an amazing guy. He has fought for equality his whole life, and he's done some amazing things, and he has said some amazing things. So these are our two quotes that we're going to look at. So the Martin Luther King Jr. one says, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." And to me, that's kind of really set in stone. You know, I have friends that have experienced racism, and if I was not to say anything, if I was just to accept that and go, oh yeah, well, sometimes, you know, racism happens, to me, that would be just as bad as if I said it myself. Because actually, I said nothing, and if I said nothing, I'm not defending my friend, I am not, you know, making sure the person who said it knows that what they've done is wrong, okay? So actually, you know, if I was to experience some sort of injustice, something happened to me, eventually the words of that person who said something horrible, they would fade. But I doubt the fact that my friend said absolutely nothing to defend me, absolutely nothing to inform that person that they were wrong. I think that would stick with me a heck of a lot longer. Okay, and the second one is from Desmond Tutu. It says, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." Okay, so that means if you stay silent, if you choose to say absolutely nothing when something is absolutely wrong, then in actual fact you have chosen the side of the bad person. You have chosen the side of the person who is racist. You have chosen the side of the person who is being homophobic, or the person who is being violent, okay? And to me, this links to two really important things. It links to the murder of George Floyd, which we've seen in the press, obviously, recently, that happened in America. It wasn't just the police officer that, you know, knelt on his neck that killed him that is now being charged with murder. It was also the police officer that stood and did nothing. They were just as bad. They chose to allow something horrific to happen when they could have stepped in and done something about it. Them choosing not to meant they chose the side of the person who was doing that terrible atrocity. And in that way, that's why they are as guilty as the person who did it. Now, to me, this really does link to things that I see at school. I've been a head of year now for 4.5 years, and I've been a teacher for 6. And sadly, rubbish things happen at school. Sometimes people aren't very nice to other people, so injustice does happen. And sometimes people speak out about it. People come and find me and they're like, look, this really horrible thing happened to so-and-so, and I want something done about it. And that's great. You didn't stay silent. You did the right thing. But if you're there, if somebody's, I don't know, let's give an example. Let's say somebody is having a fight and you've decided to film it. Okay, if someone decides to film something terrible happen, you did nothing. You were neutral. You weren't even neutral. You were almost worse than neutral because you decided to film it. You decided to do an action that did nothing to help the person who is suffering, but you just, stood there and did nothing. And to me, that means that, you've chosen the side of the bad person. We all need to make sure that we are doing something. And sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it's scary to, have to intervene when something horrible is happening. Maybe sometimes we don't feel comfortable intervening in something like that when it's kind of violent or when something really horrible is happening. But there are other things we can do. We can go and find a teacher. We can go and find somebody to tell. We can make sure that the true story is told when people are asked about what happened, okay? So there's lots of ways of getting around this. But it's just about making sure that we make a difference and that we don't just allow terrible things to happen. So my final half a point is what I'm clarifying it as, is how can we become a better school? So that should definitely see how can we become better as a school. So I've already made a mistake. So I was thinking about this and I was like, how can we become better? We're not perfect. No school in the world is ever perfect. So I was thinking about when I was at school. Now I grew up in a very small town in Gloucestershire and I went to a school that was not very diverse at all. I probably would have said that racism wasn't really an issue, but I was wrong. Just because I didn't see racist behaviour or just because I didn't actively partake in racist behaviour doesn't mean I was doing enough. Okay, and that's where this quote comes in. It says it is not enough to be quietly non-racist. Now is the time to be vocally anti-racist. And that's what Desmond Tutu meant. That's what Martin Luther King meant. They meant that we have to take this opportunity to say something, to make a difference. And we can do that together. So my final thing is this. Now I found this just before I was making this assembly. I didn't go to this school. I went to a school a little bit further down the road. But my nan lives on this street, okay? So you can see the arch in the background. If you walk through the arch and turn left, my nan lives down there. Now, I went to a school, as I said, probably 3 miles away from this arch. And I had no idea what it was. Absolutely not the foggiest. But today, whilst I was searching the internet for interesting things, I found out that this is a one-of-a-kind memorial. This is a memorial to commemorate anti-slavery, okay, to celebrate the abolishment of slavery. It was erected in the mid-1800s by somebody who was really important in stopping slavery in England. And I've walked through this arch to my nan's house hundreds, if not thousands of times, and I had no idea that this hugely important memorial, actually this is the only one left in the whole of England. So the only one that was actually built at the end of the abolishment of slavery that still exists. But I had no idea that that's what this kind of archway stood for. And that makes me really, really sad because that's where education comes into it. So that's where the previous slide matters. How do we become better as a school? We educate, okay? We make sure that we teach you history that applies to every single person. We make sure we teach Black history, that we teach, of all the amazing things that, Black people have contributed to our society over time. And we teach people about monuments like this. You don't live anywhere near it, but I should definitely have known that this amazing memorial stands to commemorate the end of something horrific, okay, and the start of something better, but as we found out, not quite perfect yet. So, my final message of this assembly. There can't really be a final message on this topic, as the fight is not over, and so this message is actually just one of continuity. And it remains the same, that quote from Desmond Tutu. So I'll leave you with this. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor, okay? So just go ahead and think about that. And I think the most important message of this whole thing is think about what you see on the news. Think about what you see in life. In every situation, if something isn't as you think it should be, do something about it. Make a difference in the biggest or the smallest way that you can. But yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed the assembly. There'll be another one next week. And so, yeah, have a lovely rest of your week.